Hello there, I'm Nathalia Melo, your unfiltered fit BFF. Mom of two turned CEO of a fitness empire. Someone who truly understands the struggles of trying to stay fit, sane, and sexy, all while juggling work, life, and motherhood. And this is the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. Follow along wherever you're listening and join me weekly as I help busy working moms just like you simplify your fitness journey so you can lose fat, regain your confidence, and feel sexy AF. It's time to stop living in the what ifs and hiding from the cameras. It's time to regain control over your body, feel sexy naked, and wear a bikini confidently. People already see you as a super confident woman, but it's time for you to feel the same way too. Come on, let's go. Hello there, fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm Nathalia Melo, your host, and today's topic is going to be mildly controversial, but we need to talk about it. If you have been doing yo-yo diets or looking for the next thing that is going to help you lose the 10 pounds as fast as you can, or the 20 pounds the quickest way possible because you have this trip coming up and you are perimenopausal or menopausal, or you're already noticing a shift in your hormones, this episode is for you. You do not want to miss it because I'm going to be giving you a lot of information and practical data that is going to allow you to make educated decisions surrounding your health, your body, your quality of life, your fat loss journey. And I've been researching for this podcast the whole morning. But before we go into it, I want to say thanks to all of you who have been leaving your reviews on all the platforms. We're up to 30 ratings on Apple Podcasts. So if you could leave your review or leave your rating, this is so helpful. So make sure that you leave that review. And now let's go to today's episode because it is juicy. I actually had something else in mind for the podcast today, but I had a conversation yesterday with a lady, lovely lady, awesome. And the conversation with her really got me thinking. She was interested in getting help with her fitness. And as I started to ask my questions and things like that, she shared with me that something had happened with her grandmother, and that was very eye-opening, and that was kind of like the catalyst for her to start to look for help with her own health and fitness. So she shared with me that her grandmother had fallen going to the bathroom, just like sitting on the toilet. She fell and broke a bone. And she continues saying, she was like, this was a completely preventable accident. And I can see how she lived her life and how she never took care of her health, of her body, and how something so simple like this could potentially have been prevented had she taken care of her body better. And that got me thinking because I had heard about the data around elderly people and when they experience a fall. So I went on my quest for information because that's why we're here. And the data that I found is going to absolutely blow your mind. So here are the stats. 20 to 30% of elderly individuals who suffer a hip fracture die within 1 year. Those who survive often experience a significant decline in their mobility and independence. And here's the crazy one, guys. Up to 50% of hip fracture patients who were previously independent require long-term assistance or nursing home care. Now, I'm 41 years old, and whenever we're talking about, whenever you are at an older age, X, Y, and Z can happen. And it feels very far away, right? But the reality is that what many people don't understand is that your old self is paying for the things that you didn't do a couple decades before. Like right now, whatever it is that you are experiencing with your body, is not a direct representation of just what you are doing right now. It's a representation of what you have been doing for a few years. You don't just wake up. And that's something when I'm speaking with somebody, with people, they're like, I don't know how it happened. I just woke up one day and I was 30 pounds heavier, 50 pounds heavier. But whenever we start to peel the layers, the 50 pounds, the 30 pounds, the 20 pounds, the 5 pounds, the 10 pounds, whatever it is, didn't just like show up overnight. It is a process. And then the sooner you realize that something is not working and that something needs to change, the more you can start to invest in your future self. Like I had a conversation with somebody else yesterday because she was talking about money and things like that. I'm like, you are going to pay. Whenever we're talking about health, there is a invoice at some point. It's either you pay now or you will start to invest and then you collect something later on, like compound interest. Using the analogy of money, you cannot just wake up one day, 3 days before you're about to retire and be like, yep, that's it. I'm going to start working on my retirement plan and start investing. That's not how this works. You're not going to be able to have a good quality of life if you decide that you're going to start investing financially in your retirement a few years before you're about to retire. And your body is the same thing. So even for the ladies who are in your late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s, early 50s, mid 50s, and so forth, it can still feel a bit far away, especially if you are somebody who is active. And I think that there is a very big difference, like the concept that people have of healthy. I have a full other episode about that. But, if I get my body moving, therefore I'm healthy. Yeah, you're statistically speaking, you are a lot, quote unquote, healthier than most people. But if you keep on gaining weight, which is pushing you on that category of the unhealthy category, and your body fat percentage is high, yes, it's great that you're moving, but something that is very easy to mitigate is not being addressed. So we need to stop also with the delusion that, I go to a few boot camps, therefore I'm healthy. No, you move. That's great. You're doing better than a lot of people, but it still doesn't mean that it is what needs to happen and that you're not doing other things that are incredibly detrimental to your ultimate health. So here are some interesting facts for you as well. And I have some data for that. So as you start to enter perimenopausal season, menopausal season, there is something that is called sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is the progressive loss of muscle mass and strength, which accelerates during menopause due to hormonal changes, particularly the decline in estrogen levels. So as we age, especially women, the loss of muscle is a given. It is going to happen. Okay. And there is data that suggests women lose between 3 and 8% of muscle mass per decade after 30%. Why is this an important data? Because when I'm speaking with someone who is on that perimenopausal season, I hear this phrase all the time. Nathalia, I don't know what to do. What I used to do is not working. And I just keep on gaining weight. And then whenever I ask, what are the things that they used to do? It's always like, I cut out my calories and then I'll do some fasting and then I'll do, Optavia, or I'll do X, Y, and Z, and like everything that it is a very aggressive restriction of calories. They don't perceive as like a restriction of calories, but it is. Or it's kind of like they starve themselves Monday through Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they go off and eat for a family of 25 because it's an overcompensation. And then another thing that happens is that they go very aggressive on the caloric restriction, which whenever you are younger, you can get away with that. Why? Because one, you have less responsibilities, you have less priorities. I mean, whenever I was preparing for the Olympia, my only responsibility was to show up to work, which was very flexible because they understood what I was doing, and make sure my clothes were clean to go to work and work out. That's it. I had 3 jobs, so there was a lot, but like I didn't have kids. Roger and I, who is my husband, we dated long distance and he was a professional athlete as well. So he was doing his thing in England at the time and I was doing my thing in Fort Lauderdale. So I could focus on myself, period, the end. My life revolved around myself. So, in my mind, I'm like, oh, if I eat a little bit extra, I'll just go do a little bit of extra cardio, which by the way, it is detrimental to the ultimate goal of losing fat and keeping it off. Just a side note. I can talk more about this if you guys want to know, but I just want to put this caveat so you don't hear me saying it and you're like, oh, that's what I'm going to do because Nathalia said that she did it. No, terrible idea. Do not recommend. 0 stars. So there is this idea that you're going to be able to keep on doing what you did before. And another thing that we need to keep in mind is that whenever you were doing that, you probably could take a nap if you were tired because you didn't have kids. You didn't have to be a snack bitch or the chauffeur to your teenagers and their 27,000 million school activities and extracurricular activities. Life is different. And you were able to still look, quote unquote, toned because of your age. You didn't have that muscle loss that it is happening as you age. So why is deploying the same strategies that you used before that quote unquote worked? And I put in air quotes because if they worked, you wouldn't be stuck now. They would have been skills that would have allowed you to stay consistent through the different seasons of life. So they didn't work. They worked temporarily. So if your goal is to keep on losing and gaining the same 20 pounds and then you lose 10 and then you gain 15 and then you lose 15 and then you gain 20 and then you see what I mean? And every single time that the set point is getting farther and farther away. And what is the problem with that? We're going to get to this right now. Whenever you go into a aggressive caloric restriction without the proper protein consumption and just looking at the number on the scale, and listen, I think that the scale is a great tool. I am not one of those coaches that is absolutely against the scale because I think it serves a purpose. It is not an absolute source of data, but it is data. And it is the most available data that we have. So now that we have this out of the way, that is why it is important to know what you are doing, especially as you are in perimenopause and menopause, and to stop doing the fuckery that you did before. Whenever you go into an aggressive fat loss, you can lose on average 25% of muscle. So I'm going to do a quick math for you here. So imagine that you go very aggressive on that fat loss. You're like, I want to lose at all costs. And that is like the line in every party that I go that people know that I am a fitness professional. What is the quickest way for me to lose like those last like 10 pounds or 20 pounds or 15 pounds? How is it? I have like a vacation coming up in like a month and a half. How do I do it? Here's the problem with that. I'm going to keep it simple with 10 pounds. Let's say that you go crazy and then you go aggressive and you lose the 10 pounds in that, short window of time. Out of those 10 pounds, 25% is going to be from muscle, right? Up to 5% can be from bone mass. So you're also losing bone density in that process. But we're not there yet. Let's focus just on the muscle, but I just wanted to put here. And then the rest is going to be from fat mass. And I'm using here for the muscle, like the kind of average. You can be higher than that depending on how aggressive you go with the caloric, restriction. But let's keep with 25 just for easy math because it makes it easier. So let's say that you lose 10 pounds, right? If we look at 25% of that, we're looking at what? 2.5 pounds. So 2.5 pounds of the 10 pounds is from muscle. We're not even going to talk about the bone right now. We're going to talk about the bone in a little bit. So you tried that fast and furious caloric restriction where you lose the 10 pounds and then you step on the scale and you're like, yes, queen, slaying, lost the 10 pounds. But here's what happens. You go to whatever event or vacation you have. And then next thing you know, I don't know, another 6 weeks has gone by. And guess what? 6 weeks or 2 months, 2.5 months. Normally the time that I see is that people regain that weight within a couple months. You gain all the way back in just a couple months. But the 10 pounds that you gain does not have 2.5 pounds of muscle in it. You're gaining 10 pounds of fat, period. And then you're going to have to work on rebuilding that muscle that you lost. And then the other problem with that as well is that many times whenever people rebound from a very aggressive caloric intake, it's not just the 10 pounds that they gain. It goes over that because they go from that cycle of over restriction. And before you bullshit yourself and say, oh, I'm not over restricting, and you ate in a manner that it was incredibly difficult to navigate life, to do things with your family, that you had to say repeatedly, oh, I'm not allowed to do this. I'm not allowed to do that. And you didn't have a strategy to get out of that. Because here's the thing, sometimes being a bit more, not overly restricting calories, but having a more structured strategy, but knowing how to get out of that more into real life, it can be a strategy that is good to deploy. But if you have no strategy to get out of that and you're just every single time going straight into the very aggressive caloric restriction, which I don't think that aggressive caloric restriction is the approach. Whenever I say that sometimes we need more structure, it might be not just listen to your body, because if we're talking about somebody who has been cycling weight and like losing and gaining, if they listen to their body, they're going to end up in the fridge at midnight. So that's not what I'm talking about. So lose 10 pounds. Out of the 10 pounds, 2.5 is muscle. You gain the 10 pounds back. It's all fat. And what is the problem with this? The problem with this is that a lot of the women who are doing this are already in that perimenopausal, menopausal season of life where sarcopenia, the muscle loss, is already happening. So now it's almost like you're adding fuel to the fire by staying stuck in this cycle of diets that you might want to BS yourself saying that it is not restrictive. And I'm rephrasing this because I feel like, there are a lot of people in denial. I want you to be very honest with yourself as you're listening to this, because positivity without clarity and without objectivity and without looking at data is delusion. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We're looking at the data. And if you're looking at the data of your rate of weight loss and weight gain, and it looks like a raccoon on freaking meth because it goes all over the place and it never stays anywhere, then you are in a yo-yo dieting cycle. Period. You might not perceive as, but I eat healthily. If you were to put in a chart your weight loss journey throughout the years and it looks like a raccoon on meth and it keeps on going up, you are in an extreme cycle. That's it. You add fuel to the fire by being on this yo-yo dieting nonsense. So you're cannibalizing muscle mass that you need because you are already losing muscle mass. Back to the story in the beginning. Whenever the lady said, like the accident with her mother or her grandmother could have been prevented, if you are investing in your muscles and keeping your muscles right now without this nonsense of yo-yo dieting and finding something that you can stick with consistently, would it be fair to say that that person would have better strength to pull herself up from the toilet, to go up the stairs, to get in and out of the shower? Just some food for thought. And listen, we cannot prevent everything. But this is something that is very preventable. There are a lot of things that we cannot do, like by just existing outside, we're at risk of getting cancer, some kind of cancer, I don't know. But this is something that is preventable. And yet people keep on being stuck on this cycle. Now let's talk about bone. And I'm going to get back to the story from the beginning. Whenever you are going through menopause, you are also losing bone density. So during perimenopause, the bone loss is about 1% per year. And then during menopause, the bone loss accelerates to about 2 to 3% per year due to a sharp estrogen decline. Listen to this. Some women can lose up to 20% of their total bone mass within the first 5-7 years after menopause. And then during the postmenopausal season, the rate continues at about 0.5% to 1%. So the bone density loss is very real already as you are navigating the perimenopausal and menopausal season. We can mitigate. Now, how do you mitigate that? By not doing the nonsense of yo-yo diets. Because I don't know if you remember when we were talking about the rate, what was lost whenever you were in an aggressive diet. 5% of the 10 pounds from my previous example was from bone density, on average up to 5%. So if you are a woman in perimenopause and menopause that keeps on relying on Optivia or keto or intermittent fasting and, overly restricting calories and then binging and all of that, you are pulling money from your 401k. You're not only not investing money in your retirement plan, you are pulling money from your 401k. So whenever you get to that age where you need the muscle and the bones, not for aesthetics, not because you want to have a six-pack, which listen, if you want to be on your 70s with a six-pack, I support that. That's my personal goal. But I'm not saying that it needs to be your goal. But the conversation here is not about aesthetics. The conversation here is the difference between you being able to pull yourself out of a toilet or having to have somebody come pull you out of a toilet because you have consistently pulled out and not invested on your future self because you wanted the results now instead of thinking long term. And I know that this is not sexy talk. Long term. No, I want to be hot now. Girl, same. I want to be hot as shit in the gym. I want to be hot as shit in a bikini. I want to look sexy for my husband. I want to take photos with my kids. But I also want to be able to play with my grandkids. But I also want to be able to be a functional elderly person that can sit on the couch and get up from the couch without having somebody bring a crane to get me out of it. And that transformation, it starts right now. And the more you postpone having something that is going to set you up for success in the long run, the more you are going to keep on pulling from your 401k. Imagine a comparison that I'm doing here with money, but that's literally what it is. Because if you are adding up to 5% bone mass loss from aggressive diets on top of the 1 to 3% from perimenopause to menopause and as much as 20% of the total bone mass within the 5-7 years after menopause, I don't know how much more clearly this can be put. And I'm going to be doing another episode as well about the problems with bootcamp classes and group classes. I'm a big fan of people that move their bodies. But for the ultimate goal of longevity, of a healthy aging process, of a healthy quality of life as you age and independent quality of life, the extreme diets that you're doing and the, freaking stupid star jumps that you are doing in your Burn Bootcamp or F45 or Orange Theory or whatever the fuck it is, that is not going to get you to your ultimate goal. And I want to make it very clear. This is not hating on group classes because I do a group yoga class. I don't mind from time to time going to a bootcamp class. I understand the community aspect of it. But from the ultimate goal of a quality of life, of maintaining muscle mass so we can age in a way that allows us to stay independent and have quality of life, that ain't it. The same way that your 100th time doing Optavia or 20th time doing intermittent fasting and starving yourself and then binging on the weekend so you can lose the 10 pounds to gain it back the day after you have your event, that is not serving your future self. If you have kids and you want to be here for your grandkids, not just be here existing, but be here as a present member of their lives instead of just watching them. Like some of you might look at your parents and might see that. They can't do anything. And you know just as much as I do, because I have that with my own mom. I love my mom to death, but my mom is somebody who has not taken care of her health. And I can see that impacting her recovery as she is going through cancer treatment. I can see this impacting her ability to go up the flight of stairs, getting out of the couch. And my mom is 65 years old. And yet she does not take care of her health. And I cannot control her. But you know what I can control? I can control me. And I can control what example I set for my kids. In the moment I learned more about the impact in quality of life in the long run for aggressive dieting, the more determined I became about being intentional about how I get to my ultimate goal if my goal is to be a bit leaner. Because my goal is also to be able to run around with my grandkids, to not have my kids wipe my ass for me. I want to be able to do that myself for as long as I can. And obviously, I know that life can happen. And I want to make this very clear. Life can happen. You cannot predict everything. However, this is something that is very preventable and is well within our control. And yet, so many people in the same season of life that I am, or, maybe even a bit older, are still resorting to the same extremes that is incredibly detrimental to their longevity and they cannot see. So I'm hoping that with this data, I can shed some light for you to understand that it is not the way to go aggressive. The goal is not the 21-day fix. The goal is not the 75 hard. The goal is the 365 good enough, because that is what's going to give you results long term. And I know that this is not sexy talk, but finding a strategy that aligns with the seasonality of life is going to be your key to success, because so many people get stuck on the cycle because they go all in and then life gets busy like it does. And then they fall off the wagon and then they gain the weight back. But it's all the weight plus and not the muscle and not the bone. And then they're like, oh yeah, that's it. I have a vacation. And then they go all in, very aggressive, lose all the weight. Life is going to keep on happening. I'm yet to see a year that, and I have a whole other episode about this. Like, I cannot remember a year that spring break wasn't there. Every year it's there. Holiday season, they're every year too. Every year there is somebody who gets sick and has these sniffles. I have kids. That's life. So if you do not find something that allows you to stay consistent throughout the seasons of life, you're going to keep on being stuck on this cycle that is not serving your future self. So let's stop looking for the 21 fix, the 75 hard, the 4-week quick, whatever. Let's see what it is that we can do 365. Not going to be perfect, but it's going to be that is investment, just like compound interest, the little investment that you make into your future self. And then whenever you combine them all, even when life is busy, and the analogy of money is still, let's say that you're contributing and then maybe in a month you're not able to contribute as much as you normally would. But you know what? You contribute a bit less, but you're still putting in the money. You're still putting in the work. You're still putting in the effort, which is going to feel big whenever you compound that in a few years' time. All right, ladies, that was it for today. This is a topic that I'm incredibly passionate about, as you can probably hear in my voice. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know in my social media if you'd like me to talk about the bootcamp. I'm probably going to do that, but if you have any questions that you'd like answer, anything that is confusing to you, let me know, and then I'll make sure that I'll include that in the next episode. It's not going to be that immediate at next episode, but it is going to be in the near future. And if you have any questions about this particular episode from today, I would love for you to send me a message on Instagram. My link is in the show notes, or you can send me a fan mail, and then I'll be more than happy to answer that as well. Instagram might be a bit easier because then I'm able to kind of like reply to you straight away. You don't have to wait for the next episode. But I love to hear from you guys. If you find that this episode is going to be helpful to someone, please share. I think we need to get this message out because I see so many women stuck in a cycle and feeling hopeless. And I don't want you to feel hopeless. I want you to understand, because change only begins whenever you start to understand and have knowledge. And I'm not talking about like Instagram knowledge or, a few podcast knowledges on the solution, because the solution is also going to differ from person to person. I think that the first step towards change is understanding the why. So that's why I gave you so much data on this today. So whenever I'm talking about how absolutely god awful the yo-yo diets are, especially for women in perimenopause and menopause, you know why, because I've shown you the data. And the how is really going to depend from person to person, because everybody's lives is different. Everybody's body is different. Everybody's season of life is going to be different. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you next week. Adios. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But let me ask you, what was your aha moment in today's episode? I would love to know. You can leave me a comment at the link in the show description. You can also follow me on social media, Instagram. Links are down below as well. And let me know what topics you want to hear more about or who I should have on the show. This is it for today, guys. I'll see you back next week for another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast.